Better eat quick before we work out. Let that food digest before we hit the ground. No, but I appreciate Molly letting CrossFit Waco come over and kind of share some insight, on where we perceive fitness at, how we achieve fitness, and hopefully today let everybody kind of leave with a little bit more knowledge. Maybe hopefully learn a couple things today. Come check out maybe what we have or right down the road, or maybe go listen to your current program and what you're doing. But the most important thing that we get out of today is not to sell you on CrossFit Waco, not to sell you on a Goals membership. It's to take this information and apply it to your own life. Make changes in your own life. You've heard the saying, we get one life. We don't get reading. So doing what we can do to extend that process, enjoy your life, feel good is what we say a lot of times. Enjoy every day. So what we'll kind of do today is I'll take you through kind of where we, like I said, perceive fitness at. Hopefully bring maybe some insight to it and kind of get your brains turning just a little bit as we talk about it. We'll spend about maybe 15-20 minutes kind of going over all of my little artwork here, and then I'll talk about nutrition a little bit. And again, we like to keep that very simple and easy. And then the last maybe 15-30 minutes or so, we'll talk about some movements, how to implement maybe different movements into your current program, the right way, the wrong way, ways to scale those movements, the focus of the movements, and so forth. So we'll kind of get into that. But at any time during any of this, if you guys have questions, just raise your hand, interrupt me, let me know as we get going. But as we start, the big question is what is fitness? How do we define our fitness? What characteristics do we need to determine who's the fittest person on the planet? How do we determine that? There's really no classification or any type of clarification that's going to say, well, these attributes, hey, he's the fittest person, he can do this. So we start looking at our marathon runners, triathletes, Ironmen, Ironwomen. They're doing these crazy, insane races. Are they the fittest people on the planet? We look at what do they bring to the table? Incredible cardiovascular endurance. Of course, we'd be able to do that gut-wrenching stuff. But let's look at some other aspects of fitness. So what we'll kind of do, kind of thinking about that, think about your marathon runner, think about your strongman, your guys at Gold's Gym, your whatever you want to think about. And what we'll do is let's try to fill out some components of fitness, and let's see if we can define the fittest person on the planet. So off the top of your head, I know we threw out the marathon runner. So we said, a good component of fitness would be cardiovascular endurance. So it's something that we can test. Definitely can test to see how right as best as I can. So we've got cardiovascular endurance. We can remember that, number one. What are some other things that you would think of? What do you need in a fitness program? What do you need to improve your fitness? Flexibility. Which can also be tested. I'll give you a hint, there's 10 of them. Nutrition, in a sense, we'll get into that. Let's look at, I should have said this meeting, let's look at kind of in your workout routine. Now, nutrition is, when we get over here, it is your foundation, definitely. What was it? Weightlifting. When we look at weightlifting things, you're getting there, we're going to get a little more specific with it. So let's think weightlifting, maybe strength. So we're thinking strength.
Ability to burn calories? Is that part of it, or is that something?
Getting there. So we'll write down strength. So we had the weightlifting, so we're thinking strength. What's something else? Maybe strength. Think of an athlete. What's an athlete? They're strong and they are lean muscle, power.
Agility?
Agility is one.
Is endurance one?
We could say cardiovascular endurance. We could also throw in stamina. halfway there. We have endurance, kind of cardiovascular endurance, stamina. So we've got, like I was saying, we talked about the strength. We think of an athlete strong and discipline, power. We do say maybe there's an 11th component of fitness, and it is the mental capacity. But they think powerful. So how powerful are you? The last ones get a little tricky. You're right down there. So if we think, one more before we get to the tricky ones, we've got one more. Let's think, think of your track athletes. What are they? Be faster. So from there, we start looking at the opposite of the cardiovascular, endurance of our Ironman, our marathon runners. So we've got the speed concept to it. How fast are they? These other ones, you're going to think more attributes that you would gain with practice. So not necessarily working out, but what are some things kind of get into the realm of like agility might be one of them. Along with practice, learning to stand on one foot requires what? Balance. What else we got? When we think of shooting a bow and arrow, hitting a bullseye, you think of how defined your movement is.
Precision?
Close, accuracy. So we're looking at accuracy. And then we got one more. If you want, you're trying to write these down, I'm trying to write with this marker, but I can go over them if you want to jot them down. So we have one more. Hand and eye. Coordination. So there we go. So we can test an athlete over these 10 components of fitness, and we can tell how good their cardiovascular endurance is, how flexible they are, how strong are they, how agile are they, what's their stamina like, how powerful are they, powerful. What is their power output? From there, how fast are they? When we're doing certain workouts, you have a certain task in front of you, it might require a lot of balance to complete that task. We look at accuracy when we start doing, say, maybe we get into heavier weight training or Olympic lifting. You see the guys in the Olympics throwing the crazy weight overhead. There is a ton of coordination involved with that. Accuracy, the balance, the speed, the power, not so much in the cardiovascular endurance and stamina, but those guys require a lot of this stuff in just one movement. So when we think about the fittest people in the planet, this is where we'll kind of get into our three spheres. So we have our metabolic condition. So think of that as like your cardiovascular endurance, and you're getting into like your stamina. Along with your metabolic conditioning, we start to look at energy pathways. So how does our body produce energy? What are the things that we do? What are the pathways that are created that we use to get a certain task done? We go all the way from exerting all of our energy in our body on a 1 rep max attempt. So how much weight can you pick up off the ground? You're going to use all of your energy on that attempt, and then you're going to have to sit there and relax for 5, 6, 7 minutes for your body to recover. So we have what we call the phosphagen phase. So that phase of your metabolic conditioning is going to require max effort in just a couple of seconds, and you're out of energy. So think 1 rep max attempt. So we need to, that's going to kind of bleed into your conditioning along with your weightlifting, so it's kind of put us in the middle of those two. When we start to look at, I can kind of maybe give you some insight with a little graph. So when we look at this graph, and then underneath here we have our seconds. So we can say 0 to, we'll say 30, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. So we have all these tasks that take different time durations. And then from here we have what we said, the phosphagen phase. So it's going to be a very quick spike in energy, and then we're done. So think, if you're sprinting, if we run a 100-meter dash as fast as we possibly can, by the end of that, or a 400-meter, everything in your body is burning. We cannot just take a 15-second break and go do the exact same thing again. We have to drain that energy system, so we need to kind of relax. So anything taking, a couple of seconds up to maybe 30 seconds is going to be your phosphagen phase. Once we get out of that phosphagen phase, our body's going to switch to our glycolytic phase, which is going to last from that 30-second point up to a couple of minutes. So think more of like 800-meter runs. You're not going to exert everything in the first couple of seconds, but after a couple of minutes, you're going to start to really feel like your body's really draining out. So with that one, maybe we'll do a little different artwork. We're going to get a pretty good spike, and then we're going to start to come right back down. From there, we get into the oxidative. So that was pretty easy to remember because it requires the oxygen. So that's where we start to get into slowing things down a little bit. Think of a 5K run. We're not going at a 5K run at our 100-meter dash pace. We wouldn't last very long. So that's where we get into where we slow down, long, slow distance. We're able to do minimal amount of work for a long period of time. So with that one, again, we're going to keep the intensity down low, and we're going to be able to sustain that for a much longer period of time. So when we think cardiovascular endurance and stamina, along with the speed and our metabolic conditioning, think your engine, so how hard can you push your engine, we also have to train in these areas as well. So we need to teach our body to sprint, we need to teach our body to go fast, and then we also need to be well-rounded in a sense of slowing down and being able to sustain that for a much longer period of time. So when we start looking at current workout routines, is that something that we're able to accomplish to get a well-rounded athlete in the conditioning aspect of it? And that's just conditioning. We haven't even moved to weightlifting and gymnastics. So there's a lot that goes into, like I said, we get into a lot that goes into defining your fitness. You're trying to figure out who is that fittest person on the planet. Once we get through, does anybody have any questions on the conditioning? And kind of think about, engine, how hard you can push your engine, different ways to push your engine. That's all going to kind of be set up with your metabolic conditioning. Interval training is great. It's a way to keep you in a certain energy system with the work and rest ratios. It keeps you out of kind of redlining or maybe getting too close to that phosphagen phase. If you're doing really quick, 20-second sprints or something, you get that rest to let the body relax before we completely redline. We do a lot of interval training. So you can take an interval training which requires, basically it's a really quick burst of speed or power or whatever you're doing for that task, followed by 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes of rest, and you repeat that cycle several times. So interval training is like a well-rounded, get a little bit of everything of your metabolic pathway style of training, I guess you could say. So any questions there? Overloaded anybody yet? We're good? Moving on. So once we get our metabolic conditioning, we can kind of see where do we fall within this sphere. When we move over to our weight training, that's where we're going to start looking at our power, our speed. Depending on what we're doing, we might take up flexibility, strength, agility, the power, speed, balance, accuracy, coordination, depending on what we're doing. Some of the lifts that you might incur, like I was saying with the weightlifting, which is the one word, is what you would see in the Olympics. Your power, your snatches, your clean and jerks. Those movements require the most motor recruitment of any movement you will ever do. There's so much stuff that the body has to do within those couple of seconds that'll trump anything else that you'll do in fitness. So there's a lot of coordination, a lot of hand-eye, where the body is in space, where the bar is in space in relation to the body, when to jump, where's the back angle, how to pull. So there's a lot of things going on. So with those movements, the good thing about those movements is once you start to increase certain areas, all other areas will start to increase as well. So when we look at our weightlifting, and if we think, the two words, weightlifting or weight training, we consider that as anything with an external object. It can be a 2-pound medicine ball, and it can be a 100-pound medicine ball. It can be a barbell to a dumbbell, it doesn't matter. Anything that you're holding as an external object that can be considered some sort of weight training. Now when we look at the weight training, we kind of have some classifications along with that as well, just like we did with our metabolic conditioning. So we can have an athlete who is really strong, our power lifters, the guys you see on ESPN throwing like 500-pound cars over walls or whatever they're doing. So we've got our strong men who are almost the exact opposite of our marathon runners. They do not have the cardiovascular endurance, but they have a lot of strength. So when we look at those guys, they're very good in the 1 rep max attempts and then taking a little bit of that load and carrying it for a short distance. But if we lighten that load and we say we're going to go for a lot of repetitions at maybe 60 to 50% of their 1 rep max, they're going to start to decline pretty good because we start getting into the muscular endurance more. We start changing that energy system on them, and they're not trained in that kind of long, slower distance. So that's where they start to fall, and the marathon runner will start to pick up. So when we look at our weight training, like I said, it's becoming, we're going to develop our muscle mass. We're not looking for you to get huge or swollen or whatever you would commonly think about when you start lifting weights. We're more focused on power and speed. So we want you as strong as we can get in your frame. And we can't change your genetics, so if you're someone who genetically has a lot of muscle on the legs, when we work that muscle from sled pulls to squats to lunges to box jumps, it's going to grow, it's going to get stronger. But we're not sitting there trying to isolate those quads and give you tree trunks for legs. Same thing with the arms and the traps and the shoulders. We're not isolating those muscle groups with what we do. But within your weight training, we want you to have the same concept as what we talked about with the running. Be able to pick up the heavy load 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, and then be able to lighten that load a little bit, maybe to 50 or 60% of your max, and be able to sustain that for a lot of reps. And then on the flip side, let's lower it down to 20 or 30%, and let's see how long you can carry that or how many reps you can do with that. So again, we need to take our weightlifting into that same kind of concept of those intermediate studies. We're still good?
Good.
It's a lot of work to get fit, huh? The last piece is going to be your gymnastics. CrossFit, we consider gymnastics anything body weight. That can go as simple as a push-up or a sit-up on the ground to jumping up on the rings and doing ring muscle-ups and handstand push-ups on the rings to walking across the floor on your hands. So gymnastics is anything that you can do body weight. Now if we start talking like jump rope and running, that would be more into your metabolic conditioning, so we're thinking movement-wise here. The gymnastics is a lot of skill practice. It's kind of like taking the training wheels off the bike and you just have to slow down. You're at the driving range trying to learn how to hit a golf ball. It's going to take practice and time for you to get the movements down. But the better your gymnastics get, the more body aware you become. So you're able to feel, and the more aware you are with your body in space, your weightlifting is going to improve. You're going to put yourself into better positions to create stronger positions when you're lifting weights. Think of your body as nuts and bolts. So your shoulders are nuts and bolts, elbows, nuts and bolts, hips, knees. Every part that moves on the body is nuts and bolts. The better that we can control our body in space, the more aware we are as to what our body position is in when we're doing other movements. So if I have all these bolts and nuts and bolts and I'm just loosey-goosey and I go and try to do a 1 rep max attempt, if you ever think of any type of structure where the bolts are loose and it moves, that whole structure is going to be moving. Your body's the same way. If I go down and try to do a deadlift and pick up a weight and I haven't tightened everything down, I go to lift that weight and I'm going to get pulled right out of position. There goes my back. There goes my, I herniated disc. I pulled something here. So the gymnastics is going to get you stronger in a sense of you're going to know where your body is in space, but you're also at the same time we're going to be working more, becoming more efficient in your body weight reps and body weight movements. When you see the body weight movements, since we are just lifting body weights, you're going to build a lot of strength with that, with one, but also at the same time a lot of muscular endurance. So if we're just lifting body weight, that's a lot of reps that we should be able to do, from air squats to sit-ups to push-ups. So when we start looking at gymnastics, we can start classifying, where your weaknesses are, and then we start attacking those weaknesses. We build your push-ups in your gymnastics, so the shoulders and chest and everything's going to get stronger. Now your weightlifting, anything upper body is going to get stronger. We start improving your weightlifting. You're getting stronger with the presses. Now your gymnastics are going to get stronger. So everything helps everything when you start to look at the three spheres. But the main thing that we want to do, when we think who is the fittest person on the planet, and we start talking about all these variables that we can test, that athlete that's going to be the fittest is going to be right here in the center. So we look at the marathon runner, we look at the power lifter, and then we look at a gymnast who is probably going to be more countergraphs, so they're probably more over here with the weight training and gymnastics. So the marathon runner is going to dominate his event. The strong guy is going to dominate their event. But what happens when the strong guy goes and does the marathon event? He's going to drop so low that he's out of the race. Same thing, the marathon guy tries the powerlifting event. He's going to get dominated. The gymnast is going to probably be the most well-rounded, but he's going to get beat by the guy that's in the middle. So think of this as being 70% across the board. So we're not training to be the best. It's impossible to be the best in everything. But the better well-rounded you are, the more consistent you're going to stay if there ever is a competition or you're testing yourself or whatever you're doing. It's kind of like be prepared for the unknown and unknowable. Any task that presents you throughout the day, you've got confidence that you can do it, and you know how to do it, and you can do it. But if you have any weaknesses, those are where your fears are going to hide. So if you ever see a workout and you're like, I am not doing that thing, you're probably not good at those movements. Or it's probably something that's going to get you out of your comfort zone and you know it. That should be the first workout that you go do, because we have to bring those weaknesses up. You improve your weaknesses, your strengths only get better. But it's finding that balance and attacking weaknesses. Cool so far. Moving along. So when we talk about our fitness, so like from what we're talking about, we're kind of figuring out, okay, what is fitness? How do I define it? From this stuff also, what sometimes we'll have our athletes do is kind of grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being the best. How's your cardiovascular endurance? Think of something of that nature. Well, how's your 5K time in relation to everybody else you know? Or how would you rate your 5K time? Once you go through these things, you're going to see your weaknesses right off the bat. You're going to see them graded with 1s and 2s, and then you're going to see your strengths with the 5s, and it's going to tell you where you need to start hanging out with your fitness to improve those weak areas. When we move off, the topic of what is fitness, and we start looking at, more than just movements and workouts, we start looking at our body as a whole. So not only do we achieve fitness through our conditioning and working out, but also, like we said earlier, our nutrition, but actually what goes on inside the body. So we can have the best looking car out there on the street, but if it's got a poor engine underneath the hood, it's not going to be a good car. You wouldn't want to buy a car like that. So a lot of this that we talk about, a lot of it's going to matter. A lot of it that matters is going to be what's going on the inside. So when we look at this kind of sickness, wellness, the fitness kind of continuum, we're going to think, we're going to put, you start putting vital signs over here under sickness. We've got high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high body fat percentage, low muscle mass. So we'll start to consider ourselves lower down onto the sickness side. Once we start improving certain areas, we start to raise the scale a little bit as we creep up closer to that wellness graph. This list is everything that you can think of. So from the 10 components of fitness, like I said, to your blood pressure, to your body fat, cholesterol, triglycerides, you name it, if we can get a measurement off of it and we have a level of high and low and what's achievable and where we need to be, we can place that into your wellness, and then we can average it out and see where are you at. So where if you have really good signs when we take the blood work, we can factor it in with all this stuff and then get an average as well. We might be up on the wellness. But if we're really good here, we're good with nutrition, we take care of our body, we're working out, it's going to start to bleed us more towards that fitness area. So I guess in layman terms, what you're looking at is if you're working out, but you're not taking care of what's going on inside the body, you're not achieving fitness yet, we're just kind of standing at halfway point. You're just well. You know, we're not dying, but we're not doing the best that we can. When we neglect the fitness and we neglect the nutrition, then we're kind of getting that double whammy. We're going to fall into the sickness category. But if we can change both of those around, that's where all of that look good, feel good starts to happen. Is when you start to get more towards that fitness area. So again, you know, a lot of CrossFit, a lot of what we do is measuring things, data. You know, we can measure all of this stuff, and then we can see, well, where are you going to fall on that at the average? You can do the same thing on there as well. Grade it from a 1 to 5. Add up your points and divide by how many things you did. See what your score is. When we start looking at how do we achieve more into that overall fitness, we look at what we have is kind of a very basic pyramid, and it's kind of going to rank things on what's the most important that you need to take care of, up to what's just something we need to throw in here and there. You know, it's not the most important thing in the world, but you definitely need to have it. As you can see, and you'll hear this in every fitness program, it's going to be your nutrition. Your nutrition is your foundation. So even if, you know, I'm sure you've seen CrossFit videos and the stuff on ESPN, those guys are doing some crazy stuff at the games. Crazy stuff. They didn't get there just by doing gymnastics and conditioning and playing around in the gym. You know, their diets are spot on. What you put into your body, when you start doing these metcons and these workouts, and you're really trying to improve these areas, I mean, your body is just like a race car. You know, if you want to perform the best that you can, recover the best that you can, fuel up the best that you can, you're going to have to put good fuel into your body. And everybody is going to be different. Some people need different percentages of this, percentages of that. And it takes a lot of fine-tuning. There is not one size fits all nutrition program. Never will be. Everybody is different. Everybody has different nutritional needs. But we have to find that, and that comes along with trial and error. And what we tell our athletes is, we're not eating to lose weight. We're not eating to lose body fat. We're not eating to do anything of that. We are eating to perform. So if you base your nutrition off of how you're working out, how you recover, how you feel during the workout, all of this stuff's going to fall into place. But if we're not eating right and we're feeling like poo during a workout and we can't finish the workout, or we make it 3 minutes and we're like, I'm definitely not going to eat a Big Mac again before I go to work out, we're not going to get good results there. But when we start to feel good, we work out, everything starts flowing, everything starts to fall into place. We recover better. We're able to hit the gym the next day, and the next day. And our sleep becomes better. We go back to the doctor. All of our numbers are starting to drop. And the doctor's like, what are you doing? I just went to the seminar, and he was saying all this sickness and wellness stuff, and we started doing it, and it all works. It's not, it doesn't have to be crazy hard. You do not have to think a lot about it. It's just come up with something, attack your weaknesses, get those better. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time to do it. Enjoy what you do. Let the nutrition fall into play. When you're working out, you should feel good doing it. And once all that starts to happen with the nutrition, then we start to gain a little bit more towards that fitness. On the nutrition a little bit more, I know you've heard it a lot, the paleo diet, the zone diet, Atkins diet, all these different ways of eating. We would say we would educate athletes on the paleo diet when they start out, because that is a very strict, non-processed diet. So if it's on your shelf and it does not go bad, throw it out. So if we have things in our cabinets right now that have been there since 1982 and we can still eat them, they're probably not that good for us. So we want real perishable foods. So stuff that's going to go bad. That's how we're made up. We want to keep a good balance of what we eat. So protein, carbs, and fats. I'm sure you've heard the eating fat will make you fat. If you want to lose weight, drop the fat. Fat is going to help your performance. So we eat a ton of fat. I'll go through probably a thing of peanut butter, things of skipping peanut butter, probably every second or third day. we eat a bunch of fat, but we're also doing a lot. So we eat, we want a good balance of fats, good balance of carbs, and a good balance of protein. And the zone diet is good for that with the 40-30-30. So 40% of your total calories for the day will be from carbohydrates, and again, we want to try to keep it, real food with your veggies and your fruits. If we start to get away a little bit, we'll switch over to maybe sweet potatoes or yogurt, things of that nature, oats here and there, but not a lot. And then for our protein, it's anything, eggs, bacon, sausage, you name it, we eat meat. So when we get to our fats, we're looking at avocados, use your fat that you cook your bacon with, the peanut butter, the almond butter, olive oil, good stuff. We want to stay away from, like I said, if you really set your mind to getting rid of the food that you have in the house that can sit there for a very long time, and you start replacing it with food that'll go bad, you will instantly start to see changes. Because that is how our body is made up. 200 years ago, we didn't have a McDonald's. We haven't evolved that much over the years. We didn't even start farming grains or the agricultural revolution until roughly 10,000 years ago. So we've been evolving for much longer than that. We grew up, when you think about it, our ancestors, we did not always have meat. We did not always have a source of protein. We did not always have veggies and fruits. So a lot of our diet was stuff that we could carry around with us, which were seeds and nuts and seeds and things of that nature. So we were born on a very high-fat diet. Although we've changed and our food has changed, you can go to the store now and you've got one item and you've got 32 flavors of that item. So you just have to be careful. And we could sit and talk for 3 months on nutrition, but one of the things that I do, and we've kind of talked about it with some of our members, meal planning, figuring out what to eat, what do you cook, what do you buy at the store can become a nightmare. We all live crazy lifestyle, we work late, get up early, you've got kids, you've got their food, you've got this, so it just, a lot of times this nutrition just slowly gets put back and it just kind of disappears and goes to the other side. What we do is I have a guy that we go through, I don't even plan my own nutrition. I want somebody else to do it and just give it to me. But what we do is I signed up with a guy, and the website is called mealfit.co. And what he does, and this is kind of an idea on how to approach your nutrition as well, is he sends me, and it's like $30 to $40 a month, but he sends me five dinners every week, 3 breakfasts, and 3 snacks. And what the plan that I'm on is called the original, so it's about 90% paleo. So my exceptions are going to be some oats here and there, yogurt, peanut butter, sweet potatoes. Other than that, meat, veggies, fruits, things like that. So he sends me a recipe. He sends me a recipe saying every Friday I get another week. So he gives me 5 dinners, 3 breakfasts, and 3 snacks. 2 or 3 of those dinners are crock pot, which is a lifesaver. So you put the stuff in there in the morning, turn it on low, you go to work, you come home, you have dinner. The crock pot meals make so much food, and now I have snack and a meal for the next day. I usually do the same thing for breakfast every day. I'm not a big variety guy. I don't need a lot of variety in my nutrition. But we went to that. Don't measure what I eat. I eat when I'm hungry. I know what I'm eating is good for me, so I'm not worried about that. If my body is starving, then I eat. If I eat, I'll find myself eating dinner when we get home at 8 o'clock at night, and then I'm starving at 11. I'll go eat dinner again. So I'll let my body tell me what it wants. But at the same time, I know that it's telling me that I'm hungry because of the activity that I'm doing. It's needing more fuel, it's wanting more fuel. Now if I wasn't working out, I wasn't burning all those extra calories, and I wasn't needing additional fuel, if my body was telling me that I'm hungry every 2 hours, 3 hours, then we might start to have a problem. But if you're active and you're moving, your body's just burning fuel like crazy. It just wants more. It just wants to keep you going. So that's how I keep my nutrition very simple. And I just do what he says. We go to the grocery store, he sends a grocery list, and we go buy that. It's like, it's very easy stuff. It'll say for this week you need 3 chicken breasts, you need 4 pounds of sausage, you need this, you need that, 12 eggs. If you have it, mark it off, you don't need it, here's your grocery list, go to the store. So a lot of crock pot stuff, a lot of casserole stuff, and it's really good food. That was pretty crazy to think about it. Because you start thinking about eating healthy, and the first thing that pops in your head is, I have to eat chicken and broccoli every night. No way. I've tried it, that didn't work too long for me. But his stuff is really good, and the amount you get with it is pretty good too. So that automatically gives you lunch the next day. That meal and that snack is gone. You don't even think about it. Take your food with you, it's there. So with the nutrition, again, that is your foundation. That is going to determine on whether you hit those goals that you set or you don't. From there, we move into your weightlifting is going to be important. So that's going to be where we start to build, the bone density. We start to train. We start to build muscle mass. Again, we're not looking to bulk up and to build a lot of muscle. We start getting too big, we gain too much weight, our metabolic conditioning is going to suffer, and our gymnastics is going to suffer. So again, with the weightlifting, we're looking to get strong. Along with the weightlifting, we're going to start to build the power and the speed and the balance and accuracy and all the other things that come into play. From there, we work on our gymnastics. From the gymnastics, again, like I said, the body weight movements. Then we move into our conditioning. So conditioning, like we talked about in the beginning, the long, slow stuff, the very quick burst of speed, and then everything imaginable in between. And then finally is sport. That sport is going to be your weekend get outside, do something. Go run the trails, go play flag football, go throw the ball around with the kid, whatever. Just get outside, do something. Go to grass and do lunges behind the lawnmower. Whatever you want to do, enjoy that day. Just get out, be active, and enjoy it, especially now that the weather is somewhat nice before it gets 200 degrees outside. But this is kind of how you want to kind of base your pyramid of starting out to achieving fitness. So I think I've touched on a lot of the basics. We could go on. You want to learn some movement. So again, we're getting kind of to movements and stuff like that. What everybody, I guess, getting into any type of workout program needs to kind of grasp is if it's something new for you, your body's not going to know how to perform those movements. So it's just like if I come up here and I say, hey, here's how we do some air squats. Everybody gets up, we do a couple air squats, and they say, all right, we're going to do 5 minutes, and you're going to go as hard as you can. Everybody's going to crawl because we have not built mechanics in that movement yet. We can't take our 3-year-old and 4-year-old and say, here you go, here's how you ride a bike with the training wheels. All right, we're going to go take those training wheels off, you're good to go. What's going to happen? We'll get some bloody knees. Same thing with the movements. With the movements that we do, we want to make sure that we always get a full range of motion with those movements. So we're meant to move. Our body is meant to move. Sometimes, depending on our everyday life, our flexibility starts to decrease. So things to kind of prevent that is, say we're sitting in a chair, we just kind of think, where's our body position at? We're at the bent knee. So from here, hips are going to get tight. We're not opening the hips up. So hips are going to get tight. My hamstrings are getting shorter. So it's going to be hard for me to extend. So a lot of long distance runners, their flexibility is very poor because they spend so much time in this closed position, they're not opening up. So that's why when we start to learn movements, or you kind of start to get into movements, your mechanics come first and foremost. And that's from doing an air squat to a sit-up, to getting into the weightlifting and learning a clean and jerk and snatch. If you start to put intensity, so intensity, as you can see, is well way on the bottom. If you start to put intensity above your mechanics, you're just counting down the reps until something snaps, something gives, something pulls. So we have to learn those mechanics first. We have to understand why we perform the movements this way, what we're trying to accomplish. And when you maybe have a fault in that movement, you know, in the squat, the knee rolls in, you feel that you know it, you know you've got to keep that knee out in the squat. When we move into the consistency phase, that's where we're going to start to apply just a little bit of intensity to that. So think of the consistency phase as your kind of, let's test these mechanics a little bit. For those that done some workouts where you start to breathe heavy a little bit, the last thing on your mind is, how is my squat form as I'm doing squats? It is, oh my God, my lungs are on fire, my legs are burning, I can't breathe. But if that's the case, again, we're getting too far into intensity. So we need to bring that back a little bit. Once we get to that consistency and we can say, hey, mechanics, we're going to learn some air squats, do a couple reps, okay, you look good. This is, you know, we spend a couple minutes on there. This is really fast forwarding a couple minutes, but now we say, okay, I want you to do 15 good air squats. So we're going to work to consistency. And what we want to see is your first air squat look like your 15th, or your first air squat look like your 100th. So there's no change in that form and technique. From there, we want you to master the movement. This is where we start to really implement a lot of the whys. So why do you need the knees out in the squat? What is the concept of that? Is it just push the knees out, or what's the concept behind the knees out? When we do push-ups, why do we want the elbows closer to the body? What happens if they start to travel away from us? You know, why in the deadlift do we want to pull down and lock everything down and lock the rib cage down? You know, understand this stuff, and you're becoming a master of that movement. And basically, you're getting to where you're your own coach, and you feel like you can now maybe coach this movement to a friend. You know so much about this movement that you're able to explain to them what to do. When you get to that point, your teaching of yourself jumps tenfold. Once you get to a point to where you feel like, or you can demo a movement or show a movement to a client or to a friend, and you see them do it, seeing them do it and being able to run them through that movement it's training for your brain. So then when you go and do the movement, that training is still going on. So once we get to that mastery phase and we get to where we know everything about the movement, now we can take off. Because now when we start to apply intensity, that movement pattern is set. So we've taken the training wheels off the bike, you can take the hands off and you can pedal as fast as you can, and your body's just going to throw you as you turn in and out of the streets. No thought process whatsoever. Your body is there, it's going to do it. But if we start to add intensity before any of these, your movements are going to change. You're going to look completely different as you start to fatigue. And that'll go from, like I said, from air squats to push-ups to any movement that we have. You're still going to get a good workout while keeping that intensity a little bit lower, but you're going to be working on a full range of motion, so you're working your body to its full potential. You're building strength from the bottom up. So we say that a lot of the squats, that we do is we want to get strong in the squats from the bottom up. And the same thing with like push-ups and things of that nature. So if we know we always want to get a full range of motion of movements, we'll do what we can do as long as flexibility will allow us to achieve that. But sometimes maybe in, say, a squat again, we go down into the squat, we have really, really short hip flexors, and what's happening is we're hitting a sticking point halfway into our squat. Well, in CrossFit, our standard of an air squat is going to be full extension of hips, and then when we squat down, we want to see that hip crease pass below our knee. It doesn't, we're not getting rock bottom, but we just want to have the same standard for everybody, to where once we see that hip crease pass below the knee, now you can come up, that's a good rep. So me doing a squat, Molly doing a squat, we're going to have the same standards. So our hip creases are going to pass below the knee, we can stand up, there's one rep. Now, if our flexibility doesn't allow us to do that, we're not going to force you, or you shouldn't force yourself down to that bottom position. Because something has to give. Your body has to change positions one way or another to allow you to get down into that position. And a lot of times you're going to flare the elbows in a push-up, or knees are going to roll in, or you're going to lose your lumbar curve and go into kind of a flexion in the squat. So we go as far as flexibility will allow us, and then over time your flexibility will improve and your depth in your squat will become lower and lower and lower. A lot of times you hear squats are bad for the knees. We've all heard that. Bad squats are bad for the knees. Our knee is similar to our elbow. So if we say don't bend your elbow past 90, You know, nobody ever says anything about that. But when it comes to knees, that's when we start to get into a lot of problems and a lot of people not liking the below parallel squats. If you've got the range of motion to do it, you're fine. If your form stays the same, you're fine. We've seen a lot of individuals come into our facility and really struggled with the squats, very tight dips, to the hips, to the hamstrings, and ankles. And it's might have taken them 6 months and they're barely in parallel, you know, maybe a year. But that just shows that our flexibility is improving. We're getting stronger in all of that untrained area that they haven't been in years. And that's why it's important to get the full range of motion in everything that you do, because if we're doing push-ups and I'm on the floor, these push-ups are not going to improve these push-ups. So for me to build strength for that entire rep, I have to achieve the entire range of motion. Same thing in squats. If you can't get down to below parallel, you need to stay down there and work strength from the bottom up. Because me doing squats from here, knowing that I can get down, is not going to improve my strength in the bottom. So the only way to improve strength is to get into that area and get strong in that area. And if you find yourself not intentionally, but you're getting fatigued and it's hard to get down in a push-up or it's hard to get down in a squat, we need to change that movement. We need to change how you're doing your push-ups. You know, everybody starting a program is not going to be able to just jump on their toes and start doing push-ups. We have plenty of athletes, a lot of ladies struggle with the upper body strength and they can't do knee push-ups. So we continue to scale that movement. So what we do is, you know, with say for push-ups, we just start to raise their ground up. So we get them on a box. If that's not enough, we go to a taller box. If that's not enough, we go taller until the worst case they're against the wall. But they are always going to achieve a full range of motion push-up. We won't let them do anything half. The squat's a little bit different story. We don't want them coming down into a squat, they're good, and all of a sudden flexibility comes in and we're down at the bottom. So we'll keep them up to where they start to lose that, their body shifts, and that's just their squat. But they know that that's my distance, I have to hit that every time. If my movement range is short, that doesn't mean that I get to cut that even shorter. Because I'm just going to continue to limit my flexibility. So the more you move, the better your flexibility is going to get. The more you cut that down, that's where your flexibility will stop.
So when you do that squat, are your hands like this? Or?
When we do air squats, you'll see a bunch of crazy stuff with hands on air squats. And sometimes people will try to build a little rhythm with what they do. Some people will keep their hands out. Hands out will kind of help you keep the chest up a little bit. Again, with the air squat, you'll know maybe balance or coordination will start to be a problem, but you can always find something to touch or balance with. You know, and using a mirror is your personal coach. You know, watching yourself do it, and kind of even getting a feel or kind of that visual test of how far can I squat this month. Work on flexibility. Look back to the mirror the next month. How far can I squat this month? We do, just like with the data that we have for everything else. If you test and retest and there's no change, then there wasn't any change. And something's got to give. Something didn't work. We got to change some stuff up and try something different. So that's kind of doing the same thing over and over and over and over again without any change. So if you don't see change, there wasn't change. So we always want to make sure that we test and retest periodically to make sure that we are still changing. We're going to do some movements. We might die when we do these movements. Ready to get up and move around a little bit? So I know we're moving the floor. So one of the things we'll look at today is we'll look at the air squat. And again, the air squat is going to be well, we looked at the air So we do some drawings from time to time. Again, what we have here, a really quick drawing is You know, the curved area here is going to be our lumbar curve. So what is our spine doing? So when we start to look at movements, the one thing we want to do is we want to make sure that when we initiate that movement, we do not want our spine moving. So if I go down into an air squat and I'm sitting here in this neutral spine position, when I go down, I don't want my spine to start going to flexion. I don't want my spine to start going to overextension. So once we start a movement, we want to stay in that position. As you get into the weight training and stuff, good thing to remember is once you're under tension or under load, you are stuck in that position. So it's not a matter of changing your position halfway through the lift. You're stuck in that position. So think of every movement that we have as a tunnel that you're going to drive your car through. Once you enter that tunnel of movement, you either have to turn around and bail out of that movement. So if I'm doing a deadlift and I feel my back arch really bad, I'm not going to be able to just straighten it out halfway through. I'm going to be stuck here until I bail out of that movement or I finish that movement and get out of the tunnel. So there is no changing your movement pattern. So that's why we always say start in a good position to finish in a good position. Okay? Because you won't be able to start poorly and finish good. You won't be able to make those changes. So when we look at air squats, anybody wants to demo? Okay, so when we look at air squats, we want to make sure that the feet are about shoulder width apart. You know, we don't want to get out too wide, but at the same time, we don't want to get in too close. So if we just say, hands are straight down, just a little bit wider than our hips, and then depending on range of motion with external and internal rotation of the hips, you might want to turn your toes out. Not necessarily to a 45 degree, but go ahead and get the toes out just slightly. When we talk about the air squat, you hear a lot of times, you'll hear your coach say, or somebody say, keep the knees out. But then we need to know why. Why do we need to keep the knees out? When we say keep the knees out, when we shoot the knee out to the side, you know the movement, you know that the machine it goes, the adductor and abductor machine, and when we turn the knees out, our glutes engage, buns of steel. Knees out is the glutes. So we want glute activation in the squat. So we don't want to focus entirely on knees out, we want glute activation. So if you stand here, let's take our toes straight ahead, feet underneath the body, and what I want you to think about is we're just going to feel how tight we can get the glutes with our feet straight ahead. So what I want you to do is try to corkscrew your feet to the side, or it's almost going to be like you're trying to slide your feet out. Don't necessarily let them go, but just kind of build some tension, and what you should feel are your glutes start to kind of activate a little bit. So when we're in this position, we have a lot of room to activate those glutes or squeeze the cheeks. When I start to go ahead and I start to externally rotate and I get my toes out too wide, I don't really have anywhere to go. I can't activate the glutes because I'm already in range. So that's why we don't want to get too far out with the toes. And if I'm out this far with the toes, I need my knees to either keep that same track or get out further beyond where my knees are, or I'm sorry, where my toes are. Because if we get out here and we get too wide, knees are going to come in. Again, we've lost our glute activation. We need to turn it on to pull those knees out. So just think, anytime you hear knees out, we're thinking glute activation. So when we start a movement, we always want to have a nice neutral spine. So if again, we'll go back to squeezing the cheeks, what that'll do is pull those hips under. So if we squeeze the cheeks, hips are under, you'll feel that belly button and rib cage kind of come down. There's our neutral spine position, and then from there we can generate 360 degrees of midline. So we're stabilizing that midline and protecting our spine. So no matter if we're doing kettlebell swings, we're doing overhead squats, we're doing front squats, we want to stabilize that midline. Again, because we don't want it moving as we go. So once we're set, we squeeze those cheeks, our pelvis in a good neutral position, now we're ready to squat. When we go down into the air squat, I got to tell them about it. So we go down into the air squat. We don't necessarily, we don't necessarily want to shoot your butt way back behind you. Because the further the butt goes back, the more the chest goes forward. So the more I go forward with the chest, if I start to transition to say back squats or front squats, and I have a barbell on my back, that barbell is no longer above my midline. So all the balance is going to be here. So the further I start getting away from that, the harder it's going to be. Then if I add an external object to that on my front rack or my back rack, that object gets way out in front of me, it's going to pull me down to the ground here. Now I have to work balance not to fall forward. So we want to make sure that we stay up nice and tall. We do want to sit back just a little bit. And once we start that movement back, I mean, like I said, just slight movement back, from there we want to go ahead and drop straight down.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? So as Molly goes down, so we're thinking, you know, once we hit that bottom position, we're really focusing on squeezing those cheeks and keeping those knees out. They go ahead and come up. If she comes down and she rolls the knee forward, we're going to start to use our knee as a pivot point. So we don't want to pivot off our joints to help us get up out of the squat, out of the push-up. Our joints aren't meant to shear. So we don't want any twisting or shearing motion into our elbows or knees. That's when we start to have knee problems and bad squats or bad for the knees. So we want to make sure, stand up nice and tall. This is where the arms can help, and sometimes we can say, put your arms up higher. We say, don't touch the arms as you go down into your squat. So that's going to force her to keep that nice lumbar curve as she comes down into the squat. So what we'll do to start, we'll just kind of say, let's do 5 little practice squats. Don't worry about getting all the way down. One of the biggest things, like I said, is going to be balance. But we want to make sure as you start to go down nice and easy, make sure that you feel your weight in your shoe. The shoe and where your feet are will tell you everything about that squat. So if we feel the toes push down, we're forward. If we feel, you know, the arches getting pressured into the ground, knees are coming in. So we want to try to stay out and try to stay back with our weight. So if we go down nice and easy with the squat, that gives us time to make any adjustments that we need to. So if I feel like I'm going forward a little, I can make my adjustments and come back. I can see where I go. If I can get all the way down, then I can kind of relax down the bottom while keeping the chest up nice and tall. Then go right back up. Do some squats. Cool? All right, guys, so we'll do it together. So feet are set, squeezing those cheeks, hips are under, nice neutral spine. From there, we're thinking nice and tight here. So all we're going to do, I'm going to do one U-turn sideways to me. So the easiest way to see it is from that side. So you guys looking this way, you can see Molly, and then looking here, you can see me. But we'll just go down nice and easy. So just thinking of a couple of things, thinking knees out, staying tight, and let's just kind of remember when we start, we just kind of sway back just a hair, and then we're going to start to drop down, keeping the knees out, and then from there we're coming right back up, and then down again. We're going to get it. Go, and then down again, good. So remember as we go down, we want the foot, when you hit kind of your bottom position, you should be able to hold it. Now if you're going down and you start to feel like everything's kind of moving, stay up in that nice pretty position here. Okay? And we'll work on the hip. You can work on the hip mobility to start to allow you to get down. So remember, we want everything to stay nice and solid, and we want to keep that same position as we go down. If we start to roll forward or we're rolling in, just stay above that. So if you start to feel any shift, just stay above that. Okay, here we go. Let's try it again. We'll go down. There we go. Go a little bit higher. There you go. There you go. That'll be good. Then we're right back up. A couple more. And then we're down. Right back up. So you got the high heels on. It gives you that good elevation. Easy squat. There you go. I want to try a couple more. We'll walk around. There we go. So as you go down, try to take that knee right over There we go. That's what we're
Nice visitor. They made you put on a visitor.
When we go down into that squat, if our knees are staying in, what's going to happen is we're going to start to get some impingement in the hip. So if we start to squat here, if we're out and my knees are coming in, we're going to start to pinch into that hip capsule.
Yeah, my good knee was hurting a while ago.
And it's going to take some time to really sit and kind of analyze the squat. And it's, you know, if you do have knee pain or you do experience pain, stay above that pain. You know, but we do want to move. You know, the last thing you want to do is say, oh, my knee hurts, and then don't move it. So we still want to move it, keep blood flowing, just not to a point to where we're going to re-injure ourselves or injure ourselves a little bit more. So a couple of things to think about, with the air squat. We want to keep the neutral spine, so that's for every movement that we have. We want to make sure that our glutes stay tight, so let's work the cheeks. Keeping those glutes tight will keep the knees out, and it'll allow you more room to sit down into. So I can sit all the way down here, but the more my knees come in, I'm going to have to come up. Now I'm getting impingement, and now I'm going to pivot off that knee. This hip capsule and the way we do squats is the exact same way we do push-ups. So if I want to protect my glutes, protect that hip capsule, get everything set, I want to do the same thing with my shoulders in a push-up. So if we stand here, we won't get on the ground or anything, I'll talk about them, but when I set up here, my squeezing the cheeks is going to be, what we say a lot of is protect your armpits. So if you're standing here with your arms down by your side and pretend like somebody's going to come behind you and tickle you, don't let them. So that's going to be the protect those armpits, and it's going to keep your shoulders in the socket, keep them in that strong position. So if you kind of think, if you're going to push yourself against the wall, if I'm going to push something over, I'm going to get back and get my shoulders back ready to push. I'm not going to get to the wall and push my shoulders forward. That's not a strong position. So I want to get back, get into a strong position, start in a good position if I'm on the ground. And then one thing you have to remember on the push-up is that if we start here in this good position, we have to finish still protecting those armpits. We don't want if our shoulders move, it's kind of like us turning on and off the cheeks as we squat. So we're going to start to move. Once we get out of position and we start that next rep, we're not going to be able to, oh, I forgot to protect my armpits. Let me go ahead and set them back into place. So once you get out of that position, you're stuck out of that position until you get up and reset. And what that's going to do is if I'm here in the push-up position and I protect my armpits, see how the elbows come down? So your elbows are going to stay down beside you. So a good indicator is if you're doing your push-ups right, is when you come down, your hand should fall right across your chest. And when you push up, you should come back to that position. If your elbows get away from you, it's hard to protect the armpits when my elbows get up here. And it's hard to keep your elbows out wide and still by your chest. You have to physically, almost impossibly put yourself into that position. So a good rule of thumb is if your elbows start creeping out away from you, your hands are coming up high, and then there's our pivot off of our joint. So that's the same thing as rolling those knees in. We don't want to pivot off our shoulder, because now we're using our shoulder to push us up at that shearing motion, and we're not using the right muscles to stabilize us and to do the movement. So if you do start push-ups and you are protecting, you're probably going to come down. If you have been not letting the elbows get out, you're probably going to come down and go and be stuck, because now you're forcing the muscles to work, where in the past, and however many times you've done push-ups and however long that's been, we've just been pivoting off that shoulder. So we haven't really been training the muscles. So when you start to do things the right way the first time, or maybe you kind of built a bad habit one way and you start to change your form and technique a little bit, it is going to be a lot harder. Because now you're in the right position, your muscles are working the way they should, and it will be harder. Just know that you are going to get stronger out of that new position. Just don't change your form and technique as you start to get fatigued just to get reps in and start to do them. So if you get kind of that way, again, we're letting that intensity get a little bit too high. Just bring it down just a little bit. So never sacrifice your form and technique just to get another rep, because you only have so many of those before something gives. Cool. Any questions? Awesome. Last thing, we're starting you guys are more than welcome to come try out a class. We every first Saturday we're teaming up with the yoga bar. They're connected they're connected onto our building. So right over here on 8th and Webster, we're connected to the yoga bar. We've teamed up with the yoga bar, Olive Branch, and Intensely Place. Right now, Intensely Place is the apartment complex over by the Whataburger. And what we're going to do is we're going to start kind of a fitness event every first Saturday of the month. So think of the farmer's market for food, and we're going to do the farmer's market for fitness. So getting into the event is going to be free. So the way we're going to run it this Saturday is you'll come in at 8:15 on Saturday morning. We'll do kind of a little introduction. At 8:30, yoga is going to do a 15 to 20 minute yoga demonstration. We're going to do our CrossFit workout from about 9 to 9:30. Olive Branch is going to serve muffins and kind of after workout meals at 9:45. Then Bear Mountain will be there, and they're going to kind of do some product demonstrations and stuff. This first weekend is going to be kind of our trial runs, the first one that we've done. But this May 3rd, I think is the first Saturday, will be our full-blown event. So it'll happen every first Saturday of the month, and we're looking to bring all the downtown businesses together, give everybody something to do, downtown. As soon as the Hippodrome gets closer to completion, we're going to start to offer kind of a daycare, or you can bring your kids there and let them do activities while you come and work out and have a good time. We'll also give out coupons, to the Hippodrome, when it's good, when it's rolling. We'll have where our parking lot is. Our goal is to have that full of vendors, so you can kind of walk around, and all the vendors that are going to be there are going to be kind of fitness like-minded individuals. So it'll be kind of a fitness fair every first Saturday of the month. So we'll get to where we offer different specialty classes, a kids class, a rowing class with our Concept 2 rowers, maybe a women's only style class to master's class, whatever. And we'll just have these things throughout the day on Saturday. So kind of a place to kind of get out, try something new, kind of like we did today, learn something new, take it with you. But you guys are more than welcome to come any Saturday for a free intro class and try it out. If you have any questions about anything, just let me know.